Good morning, everyone. University President, University Vice Presidents, Deans, distinguished keynote speakers, faculty, authors, esteemed guests, and students. It is such a pleasure to be back with live face-to-face conference attendances after 2 years of virtual interactions. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome you all to the International Conference on Sustainability, Development and Innovations, ICSDI 2022. To start the technical sessions, I would like to welcome our beloved PSU President, His Excellency Dr. Ahmed Yamani, to give the opening speech.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, good morning to you all, and it is a great pleasure for all of us here at PSU, and we are pleased and delighted to have our distinguished guests here at PSU. We welcome you all, and we truly thank you for taking the time with your busy schedule to personally be here with us, to participate in an important conference, not only to the Kingdom, but also for the whole region and beyond. The first international conference on sustainability, development, and innovation. We truly wish you an enjoyable learning experience at the conference and an opportunity to exploring Saudi Arabia's ambitious project and its actual achievements in sustainable development at various levels. Before making a few more remarks, we would naturally like to thank the organizer, PSU College of Engineering, for bringing together on a common platform local and international academics, researchers, practitioners, professionals, NGOs, and scholars in higher education to share and discuss important issues and exchange ideas in the field of sustainability, its recent development and innovation. Our keynote speakers will address some of these vital issues. We need also to thank those scholars who will be speaking and making presentations, giving workshops and panel discussions over the next 2 days. For those from PSU and local institutions, let me congratulate on your work and sharing your knowledge. For our international guest speakers from other institutions, let me reiterate a warm welcome to accompany my thanks. At PSU, our aim is to be at the forefront of higher education in the Kingdom. One of our primary goals is to broaden the research horizon and to stimulate technical discussions and social activities that will prompt engagement and collaboration not only for our faculty and students, but also among the community at large. I applaud the College of Engineering for taking the initiative to orchestrate this timely conference, which is in line with SDGs related activities as they are hand in glove with the implementation of the Kingdom's Vision 2030. This is yet another example of the many opportunities for technical discussion gatherings that have been and are held at PSU. In closing, I would like to reiterate our thanks to our sponsors, university partners, authors, reviewers, keynote speakers, the local committees, and the many talent to make the unique international conference an overwhelming successful event. And we would also naturally like to feel that we have not only made friends with some of the leading experts in the field, but that this conference will also mark the beginning of establishing the basis for a long-term relationship with PSU. It is best to stop here and let the experts in their respective field take the floor. Thank you all again, and I trust that you will enjoy the rest of the program, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yamani. And now, let's kick off our conference with the first plenary lecture, A Roadmap to Sustainability. We each have a path to take by ASCE President, Mr. Dennis Trax. Mr. Trax is the James T. White Endowed Chair, Department Head, and Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Mississippi State University, and the Director of the Mississippi Transportation Research Institute. He is a licensed professional engineer and holds national certifications as an environmental engineer with the American Academy of Environmental Engineering and Scientists, and as a water resource engineer with the American Academy of Water Resource Engineers. He currently is the faculty advisor for the Mississippi State Chapter for Engineers Without Borders, and his work with the organization led the chapter to install 9 water wells in southern Zambia, bringing sustainable clean water to almost 10,000 people living in a region that goes without any precipitation of 6 or more months a year. Mr. Trax, ladies and gentlemen.
There we go. And we're running. Okay. Welcome. Let me first off say thank you on behalf of myself personally and ASCE in general for the opportunity to speak with you today for a brief period of time about what the American Society of Civil Engineers is doing to try and create a conversation on a global scale with regard to sustainable infrastructure. And let me extend my appreciation to the President and to the College of Engineering and the College of Architecture and Design for hosting this. I've reviewed the conference, and I think that it's going to be a really interesting, really informative process. I move away from the stage, that way I can move in case somebody wants to throw something. Moving targets are harder to hit. So also, I fidget a bit. So if you will, I'm going to kind of work with you and hopefully this isn't intimidating, but it's just kind of the way I prefer to lecture. And in the same sense, what I want to talk about is the fact that there's a significant shift in our planet. We've been talking about it for over 100 years. We've denied it to a point where we just can't deny it anymore. The thing we also have to realize as we're moving forward, when we talk about designing for 2030, 2050, 2070, and through the rest of this century, the planet that we're living on today is not going to be the planet that existed 100 years ago or 20 years ago. There's a substantial change in the environment that's going to require us to look at new climate impacts on our infrastructure, and that's going to impact how we define sustainability. So let's redefine that term just briefly and emphasize that when I talk about sustainability, I'm not just talking about using renewable resources. What I'm talking about is building an infrastructure that lasts longer, that is has a lower footprint in terms of carbon during its construction and during its life. It has lower maintenance cost because we invested in the initial construction in a way that sustains it for a period of not 50 years, but a period of 70 to 100 years without significant rehabilitation. It's got to resist a climate that has changed substantially. So we're talking about resilience, being able to withstand new environmental conditions that we've never had to design for before. And we also have to design them in a way that they're more robust. What I mean by that is that when damage occurs, because it will, that we are able to renovate, repair, rehabilitate that structure in a way that, again, has a lower cost and that the level of damage is substantially reduced. So, with this changing planet, we also have to look forward to what the expectations are. Let's recognize that infrastructure is not just about quality of life, though that is certainly part of it. It's not a municipal process. It's not just the fact of how it impacts individuals individually. When we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about the platform, the foundation for socioeconomic development within a community, within a region, within the world. So without a substantial infrastructure, a robust, resilient infrastructure, a sustainable infrastructure that supports economic growth, we're not going to be able to address the problems we have. Reduced resources in terms of the sustainable planet that we have, the finite planet that we live in. Recognize that we're talking about substantial increases. 50 billion people added to the overall population of this planet in the next half century. Being able, where are we going to put all of these people is part of the problem. And then, of course, all the socioeconomic and political aspects that come to bear in terms of prioritizing infrastructure development. So, with this growing challenge, we have to begin to think about doing new things in new ways, using new materials, and new design approaches. We're going to have to address this challenge that's been handed to you, those of you moving into the world, at all levels. It's not just about being the technical experts, engineers, architects. It's about being part of a comprehensive team that engages social science, natural science, physical science, and bringing this team together to create new solutions. It's not about one person being the master of all aspects of a project, but rather maybe more a master of systems engineering, bringing the various components of the system together and understanding how they fit in a way that is unique, creative, and sustainable. It's also a matter of recognizing that we need to revision our role. And of course at ASCE, we're focused primarily on the process of civil engineering. But let me say that when I talk about civil engineering, I'm talking about the whole thing, the whole spectrum of infrastructure. It's not just the design, but it's the planning and understanding what the process needs to be, what the project needs to be, what the limitations, resources are. The understanding, setting up the problem. As we tell our students all the time, you can't solve a problem unless you know what the problem is. And it's a comprehensive understanding that we need to start developing in the planning phase. It's getting out of that habit of saying, I'm building a water treatment plant, I'm building a road, but rather thinking about the fact that I am building infrastructure which includes a water treatment plant or a road. It's also about recognizing that the design technique, as I've already said, has to change, but it's got to change in the concept of constructability. Tell students all the time that you can design the best system in the world, but if it's not constructible, you haven't done anything. You've wasted your time. So comprehensively, we have to understand the planning, the design, the constructability, but we also take it to the next level. The operation, maintenance, and ultimately decommissioning of that structure. In environmental engineering, we've talked about it for 30 years. Life cycle, cradle to grave. We've had to understand from the moment something is created to the moment it disappeared, how it impacted the planet. Well, we're now asking that to be incorporated into the process of civil engineering in that broad spectrum of infrastructure development, sustainable infrastructure development. So, what's our role in sustainability? We'll certainly have to be technically competent. It's important for those practicing in all stages of their career to be technically competent. I've talked with many, just in the few hours, if you will, the day or so that I've been here, about the problem that we have with individuals getting into this profession and not staying current with technology. And as a result, they become reticent, they become resistant to change. We have to overcome that. We have to empower the younger voices who are technically competent to stand up and say, I'm a servant leader, I'm a professional, I'm technically competent, we need to do things a new way. Because something isn't broken or isn't wrong doesn't mean it will be in a short period of time. The planet again has changed. So we need to empower all levels of those in this profession to step forward and feel empowered. You get that empowerment by being technically competent, if not technically superior. So I challenge everybody in the room and everybody that's online to recognize that you have to be the best version of yourself. Doing the minimum isn't sufficient. You have to be better. And then when you get that voice, when you get that authority that comes with technical competency, you've got to take another step. It's not over. Because you can't allow yourself to be relegated to a commoditized product. You can't allow yourself to basically sit back and let others tell you what it is that you're supposed to be designing. You have to engage in the development of policy. You have to take on the political role of establishing conversations with those individuals who will supply the financial and other resources that will make the decisions about what is built and how it is built. We need to volunteer, interject ourselves into the process so that we understand and share that understanding with the individuals of how we decide what it is, that planning piece. Even before planning begins, the conceptualization piece. That's all part of our responsibility too now. So the job's big. And we see that role of being a steward of sustainable infrastructure as challenging but rewarding. It becomes a process of communicating. Yes, communicating, not necessarily just calculating what it is that we need to be doing. We need to have a vision for this century, excuse me, not the next century, we can work on that one later. We need to have a vision for this century. Not today, but 50, 70, 80 years in advance. What is it that we need 50, 70, 80 years? What are we going to need to be sustainable? What's the planet going to be like? Because keep in mind that while it took us 100 years to change the planet to the point where it is today, we're not going to, if we did everything that we possibly could to correct what we're doing wrong in this environment, it would take decades for it to return to what it used to be. So the environment you're in today is the environment you're going to be into for years to come. And that's if we're successful in making the changes we talk about. Of course, if we fail, the outcomes would be catastrophic. So we can't fail. And that's part of our job. When we talk about engineering sustainability, on this list, let me move out of the way. I don't make a very good window. When we talk about sustainability, I've listed here some things that I think reduce or have an adverse impact on sustainability. And I think there's some things listed here that I wanted to share with you that increase or expand the capacity for sustainability. Of course, what you're doing right now is reading the list, and my drum of voice in the background is just that noise. But briefly, dealing with the past. And I'm talking about not dealing with it in the sense of recognizing that what we did in the past doesn't work for the future. And that the people that live in the past are an impediment to us advancing to where we need to be. Retaining at the same time cultural structure. We have to honor the culture that we're working in. We have to respect the community that we're dealing with. The analogy that I came up with years ago, in the United States, we talk a lot about the wrong side of the tracks. And that basically is the downwind side of the tracks that received all the pollution and all the noise and all the negative impacts from railroads. And we also then divided communities as a result of putting this structure in between the community, divided them culturally, socially, economically. We now have to be more respectful. We also put railroads in a way that destroyed habitat, displaced people. We have to recognize that the infrastructure that we build is a service to people, not a detriment to the people. And it's about the society. Then maintain our transparency, communicate. And let people understand why we're advocating for what we're advocating for. And it's not just about making another dollar. Okay? This is what we've done at ASCE quite successfully. Our example would be the ASCE infrastructure report card that we put out on a U.S. national basis for over 22 years. And as a result of that, while it's obvious that civil engineers are going to benefit from whatever we do in infrastructure, as a result of that, we had substantial impact in a recent act, what we call the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that was signed into law back last fall. I had the honor of representing ASC at the signing of that, one of about 800 people who were in the front lawn of the White House when President Biden was signing that into law. And the reason we were there, the reason ASC was there, the reason I was there, was because we were recognized, albeit we would benefit from this. It was recognized that we were professionals, and as a professional, we were putting ourselves secondary. We were doing this because it was about the public health, safety, and welfare. It was about putting other people first. It was about being servant leaders. It was about doing what was right, not just what was best for us. We were recognized as honest brokers. And you get that by that transparency. Of course, by now you've finished the list. Creating sustainability is talking about creating a new future. Looking ahead and thinking about what it is we're going to do. Are we going to have drones delivering lunch during the day? And how that impacts the structures, let alone all the other things. I've got a faculty member working on a computer-based drone management system to handle just that kind of scenario, and how that interfaces with general aviation and air transport so that we don't end up running into planes with our drones and obviously killing people. Understanding how to interpret what it is that we're trying to share in a way that individuals can share in that vision with us, rather than stand on the outside. Because if people don't understand, if the policymakers and the community at large do not understand what it is we're advocating for, they will generally be resistant to it. People much more reticent, much more resistant to change. So what it means, folks, is that we as civil engineers need to take on the role of master builders. A master builder is somebody who is a master of their craft and applies that craft in a way that betters everybody else. We need to step up and take on the challenge of, again, being the best version of ourselves, whatever version that is, and whatever role we wish to play. We cannot settle just for doing a job. We have to settle for being the best version and defining what that job needs to be. That forces us into being innovators. It requires us to think in new ways about projects that otherwise would seem pretty routine, pretty mundane. We have to think in a way that uses new materials and uses these new techniques, uses a new approach to what infrastructure is supposed to be. Sustainable, robust, respectful of the community, diverse, inclusive, so that we enhance the quality of life, improve the socioeconomic platform, and at the same time then provide a product, a service, a result which increases economic competitiveness. We also need to recognize, as I've already suggested, that we're going to fail. It's not technically feasible for us to build systems that are impermeable, that we have to balance the risk and the reward. We have to recognize in developing this infrastructure, that robustness that I talked about earlier, being able to repair it quickly, we have to recognize the trade-offs between building something that is robust versus something that is impenetrable. And that risk management piece is critical, because the problem that you're dealing with today, the problem we're dealing with today, is the data that we have for risk analysis is obsolete. When I was starting my profession, I had 100 years of data that I could count on to estimate what a flood was going to be, or what the flow in the channel was going to be, or what the precipitation was going to be. If you're using data that's more than about 20 years old, your data is wrong. And so we have to adjust what it is that we're doing to recognize that not only do we have to calculate risk, but the data that we're calculating it with is flawed. And so we have to put our tolerance margins wider. We have to think in a broader sense. what we're doing in the United States on the near term is we're changing the way we do our design analyses. In the case of water resources, we've changed our design frequency for our storms to represent a higher storm event or a less frequent event, because we already know it's not as infrequent as we think it is. But what we're also doing in the United States, and ASCE is working with this, we're working with NOAA to start engaging and looking at building that new database. There's a lot of data that we can mine now because we have moved to the way we collect data to be a more digital platform. We can estimate the amount of rain that's fallen in an area much more accurately than we did 100 years ago by putting out rain gauges. So we're working with NOAA to expand this database, rapidly replacing the old data with much more robust, much more defined, much clearly defined data. And in addition to that, we're putting into place and promoting and supporting in our policy processes the idea that NOAA do this on a repetitive basis. Every 5 years, come in and completely replace the database with the new database, a more robust database, as opposed to waiting 50 years before anybody even looks at the data, because the last time the data was looked at that we worked with in the United States was 1963 to 1965. That's how obsolete the data is. Okay? So those are the kinds of things that we're working with. And of course, then we need to take action. And this is what this conference is about. Coming together as a group on an international platform to recognize that things have changed and therefore we must change with them. That we must partner at a global level to work towards a sustainable world with limited resources, higher expectations, and a higher demand on the infrastructure that is so critical to the quality of life we have in the socioeconomic platform engine that we're trying to develop or sustain. That's the role that we have in this. That's why a conversation like this is so essential. ASCE adopted 4 sustainability goals that solidly embrace the SDGs. One of these is that we supported and stood up, and there's now an organization called the Envision Sustainability Platform. Envision is a new method. Many people understand what the Green Building Council did with regard to sustainable design. And the LEED certification that came out of that was really great, for the most part, for buildings. What ASCE and other organizations have done in putting Envision together is put together a program that works for all sustainability platforms, whether it be transportation or building or water or whatever. So that kind of process, looking at that, is what we've stood up. Second thing we did, embracing the SDGs, was put in a plan for advancing policy. The infrastructure report card that we do is part of that. The work that we've done with the federal government in trying to advance the sustainable design. And we're currently working right now with federal agencies, Department of Transportation in particular, to put together an analysis of life cycle cost analysis requirements for all of the money that's going to be used. About 2/3 of the money that's going to come out of IIJA is going to be applied through existing formula. But 1/3 of that money, a little more than 1/3 of that money, is going to be established or distributed based on grants and best use needs. And that best use need is going to be platformed on cradle to grave, life cycle cost analysis, sustainability. Though sustainability is a requirement for all the projects that are employed. Again, new needs, new emphasis. And so the sustainability goal also then becomes one of establishing and recognizing it's important for us to do research, to come up with the new materials. And we depend upon the universities to do that research, much like we depend on industry to apply that research. So it's going to be important for the academic community to step up and look at developing these new materials and these new techniques and engaging in interdisciplinary work that leads to a new vision as to what this is going to be. And therefore, we took all of these goals and put it together as a roadmap. And this roadmap is leading to products. For example, we have a sustainability guideline, a standard practice that's coming out. It's ASCE 73 that's going to be coming out very shortly, that defines a new set of guidelines for sustainable practice. Now, I'm not talking about a building code. I'm not talking about a design manual as how to size members of the structure, but rather how you analyze the carbon footprint, how you look at the impact, the sustainability. It talks about really a new paradigm as far as how we evaluate the sustainability. COP26 is another program that we're absolutely engaged with in terms of trying to advance the idea of the incorporation of new design and construction methodologies that reduce the carbon footprint and therefore have lower impact on the environment. And there's a long list of other things that we're doing within that process. But the cornerstone of it, the way I've come to frame it in my conversations, we've come to the point of recognizing that we can no longer settle for just simply doing projects right. We can't allow ourselves to be commoditized as professionals, to simply be relegated to designing that water plant or that road. What we have to do is recognize that we need to start doing the right project. What I mean by that is that and the example I always use is that if I'm designing a transportation corridor, and that may be a road or a rail system, I also have to recognize that that transportation corridor could be a corridor for power transmission, telecommunications, water and wastewater, and stormwater, and this entire corridor needs to be designed at one time in a sustainable, robust way so that I don't have to come back year after year after year tearing up the road that I built, putting in these other components. We build it first, we build it to last, and we build it in a comprehensive way. That's why it's important to get back into the planning, even the conceptualization part, even into the policy part that leads to all of the infrastructure that we talk about developing. It's really about rethinking this process, and of course what that means is these projects are going to be more dynamic, they're going to be more comprehensive, they're going to be more demanding, and it's going to require more people than we currently have in the workforce. This is one of the things we're dealing with at ASC, we talk a lot about, is the fact that we're looking at a reduction in the number of students that are be coming out of the universities over the next decade at a time when we have a substantial part of our workforce getting ready to retire, and at the same time the demand today for civil engineers in general, is higher than the capacity that we're supplying, and this disparity is going to only get worse. So what do? We need to be more inclusive. This is coming into our profession. We need to also look at that team that I talked about earlier. Not just thinking about engineers, but looking at the scientists and the social scientists and the physical and natural scientists and bringing them all together as part of that constructive team in developing where that infrastructure needs to be. And then, of course, developing the new standards that lead us to these guidelines and making sure that we end up where we need to be. This is all part of what we're doing as well. So we need to embrace these new standards, but recognize that these standards aren't simply a matter of codification or process, but really more of a change of paradigm on that process and how we go about doing it. Making sure, we're doing the right project, making sure that we're protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, making sure that the infrastructure we have today is replaced with infrastructure that is sustainable for tomorrow. So, that safe, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure is, of course, what everybody's going to be talking about over the next few days. That safe, sustainable infrastructure is the goal, and I challenge you to embrace the conference and understand just how that's going to impact what we do. It's going to build the capacity of those of us in civil engineering, in fact, all the professions related to infrastructure development. And this capacity building is talking about role changing. The capacity building is talking about inserting ourselves into a different conversation we may be a little uncomfortable to, but it's essential for us to do. And that role becomes advocacy, again, communication, policy development, engaging the decision makers, so that not just being told that we're going to design something, but telling them why we need to design what it is that we propose to design. And again, focusing on the comprehensive project, focusing on designing the right project the right way to help offset what we've done already to this planet and do it in a way that, of course, makes it more sustainable, more robust. I want to share about a 3-minute video with you that I think will characterize what it is we're doing at ASC.
Prison walls and along ways.
The one we covered is now the second largest in state history.
Future World Vision is a project we started about half a decade ago, and we focused originally on the floating city for a variety of reasons, including the fact that over the next 30 years, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 centimeters of sea level rise, regardless of what we do today, which means that we're going to have substantial inundation of coastal areas throughout the world and displacement of individuals as a result of that. We shifted over to megacity because in that same time period, we're expecting, depending where you are in the world, somewhere between 70 and 85% of the entire population will be living in an urban footprint. And so the environment within these urban communities, these future cities, is something that we need to start talking about today. And Future World 2070 is doing that. Okay, there we go. Not sure what that was about, but it is what it is. So next week, we're going to launch online our virtual representation of Future City 2070. And we've gone through 2 iterations on this process. It's a virtual, actually 3D VR-based system that allows engineers to engage and look in ways that will allow us to theorize, what if? What if I do this? And what if I don't do that? How does this decision impact the overall infrastructure design for a city, or how a city is lived in? And looking at sustainability of structures, looking at breathing structures, looking at structures that are completely autonomous. A word you probably think about automobiles. Autonomous buildings. Buildings that create their own energy, treat their own waste, control their own environment through a combination of natural design and artificial intelligence. Blending the 2 extremes into a system that creates a sustainable environment with no carbon footprint, no demand on resources, and a substantial life. This is what we're talking about in the Future World, Future World Vision. So I'm going to leave you with this, as much as, if anything, my time is up, and let you know that it's up to you. It's our future, but it's up to you to build it. It's up to you to vision it. It's up to you to engage in a way that establishes policy, supports the profession, and helps us create a sustainable environment. We now understand what that term means. A sustainable environment that's robust enough to support economic community development, at the same time being respectful of the community, being inclusive of all the components, all the individuals in that community, and providing equality and diversity in how we go about solving these problems. So, which path are you going to take? Do you understand your role to play? Thanks a lot for your time. I hope you have a great time.
Thank you, Mr. Kibaks. What an inspiring words, and it is time to change indeed. And we all hope to be part of that innovative, sustainable future. And I would like to welcome His Excellency Dr. Irani and Dr. Al-Majid to the stage to join us for a token of appreciation to Mr. Kibaks. And now, please welcome with me Mr. Raed Al-Basit from the Red Sea Development Company, TRSDC, with an insightful lecture about regenerative tourism, planning, delivery, and beyond. How TRSDC is shaping the future of tourism. Mr. Raed is the head of the Corporate Environment and Sustainability Division of the Red Sea Development Company and Amala. The RSDC and Amala are among the Vision's 2030 mega projects established in Saudi Arabia to develop and promote new international luxury tourism destinations and diversify the kingdom's economy. His role includes helping firms meet ambitious sustainable goals in the line with the global performance standards. He has been leading both companies in integrating pragmatic solutions to overcome complex environmental assessments and enhancement issues to satisfy UN Sustainable Development targets. He gained his master's degree in Safety and Environmental Administration from the World Maritime University in Sweden and a bachelor degree in Merchant Marine Operations from Solent University in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Raed Al-Basit.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ya'tikum al-afiyah. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking His Excellency, the President of PSU, for the lovely evening last night, but also for hosting us today at this very important conference to talk about sustainability. I'll summon the courage to also pretend I'm a lecturer and stand, not use my notes and not even look at my slides and see how well I do. I did thoroughly enjoy the previous speaker, esteemed speaker. It was really refreshing for me to see you talk about the what, to see you talk about, what do we need to do to achieve sustainable development. We are in the business of sustainable development, and I hope today I'll talk to my young colleagues about how did we do it, and how we are doing it now, how do we plan to continue doing it. Wasn't long ago that I was also in a university studying for my BSc degree and a master's degree. A few decades do not count as too long ago. And it is those young that will carry this forward. It's you are going to run this, you are going to operate this, you are going to find out what did we do well in our planning, in our construction, our early planning, and you're going to find out what are the gaps, what mistakes did we do. And you will become responsible to do this, to carry this for the future of Saudi and for the future generations of Saudi. My name is Raed Al-Basit. I'm the Group Chief Environment and Sustainability Officer for the Red Sea Group, and the Red Sea Group is responsible for two Giga projects, the Red Sea project and Amala project, and a few other projects, smaller projects along the whole coast of the Red Sea. Today I want to talk about something that we take a lot of pride in presenting to the world, in that we want to talk about regenerative tourism. Tourism has always been an industry in the world that has suffered from has really negatively impacted environments, really negatively impacted people's lives. And locals, where tourism exists, have suffered from that development. The environment was negatively impacted because of the pressures that tourism present on both the social aspect, the socio-economic aspects where they exist, but also from an environmental perspective. The Red Sea Development Company is, as I said, is responsible. By show of hands, how many of our young know about the Red Sea Development Company and Amala project? Great. Get to know more about it, ladies, gents. Read more about it. As I said, you will be the ones responsible for operating and running and expanding those giga projects. The Red Sea project, which is between Al-Wajh and Umluj, and the Amala project, which is very close to Dubba, between Dubba and Al-Wajh on the Red Sea coast. This slide is a very important slide, and I hope that you would join me in understanding that yes, sustainability is about what we do on the ground. Sustainability and environmental protection and environmental enhancement is about how do we do our planning, how do we start by bringing in systematically, as you mentioned, those natural scientists, ecological scientists, terrestrial scientists, and engineers, bringing them all together in a systematic way for our pre-planning, during our planning, and also during our construction and development. But it's also very much top-down. We have enjoyed a huge deal and very important and critical, really key support from the board members, from His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is the chairman of the board. And as you can see, a very diverse and very esteemed and diverse board members who run and oversee the Red Sea project. And yes, it is on the ground, but the political backing as well as the specific and strategic direction that is provided by the board is very important in terms of sustainability. The enemy of sustainability, the enemy of environmental protection, where things have went really wrong around the world, is that missing piece of one, enjoying a strong support from a government or from the shareholders to plan and develop a project that would be not for this generation only, but for the future generations. The other one is that the board also sets the limits and sets the direction for the project and for the company, so that we are truly can deliver them on a vision. They set the vision, and the company is responsible on delivering the vision. We are trying to, what are we trying to do? And we try to summon all of the targets and all of the, what do we mean by regenerative tourism? Sustainability, as you well know, and you know the definitions of the World Health Organization has tried to define it. Also, the many UN bodies have tried to define sustainability. And as the previous speaker has alluded to, it's the responsible use of the natural resources and applying those natural resources in a way that is fit for human use, but also the responsible use that allows future generations to also use those natural resources. What do we mean by regenerative tourism? Before I try to define regenerative tourism, I'd like you to maybe go with me on those figures that you have here on the slide. We are truly, we try to do it in three distinct ways. We try to enhance the habitats in ways that continually renew the environment, and that is, I want you to make the differentiation between that and protecting the environment. So, I did something there. So it's not the aims of the development, the aims of the project is not only to protect the environment, but to enhance, and that means serious and capital investment into the environment to enhance the natural habitat, and that also means proper planning and proper management to remove existing pressures that are now on the environment in both locations, in Al-Wajh Lagoon, where the Red Sea project is, but also in where Amala is. The second point is on adopting and developing pioneering technologies that optimize operational efficiencies. And I would like to, I stressed twice that you will be operating. The real critical stage for any tourism project is not only the vision that is set by the board, it's not the planning and master planning, it's not only the design and the construction. All of that is very serious, but all of that happens in a relatively short period of time, where many other tourism projects around the world, especially maybe here in the Middle East and also in the Far East, have terribly failed in protecting the environment. Is the operational pressure. It's the pressure that extends over a long period of time, but it's not noticeable, it's not serious, it does not call for governments and politicians and shareholders to intervene so that the environment is protected. But the death by 1,000 cuts is the long-term operational pressure, that small pressure that expands over a long period of time, is where tourism have continued to fail in the past. The other one is using scientific research, data, and technology to make informed decisions. And I loved when the esteemed speaker talked about bringing all of the scientists and the engineers and the architects and the environmental engineers and the environmental scientists, bringing them all together in your early planning stages so that you have informed advice and you have science-based advice from all of those disciplines for you to make decisions that cater for all of the risks that you are undertaking in an development. Because any development does include a risk on the environment and a risk on the people, a risk on the socio-economic fabric of where tourism does exist. One thing, as the CEO of this project continues to remind us, but also reminds the world, one thing we did differently with the Red Sea Development, the Red Sea Development Company, is we did not talk, and I know I'm hosted by the engineers, we did not talk to the engineers first. We did not talk to the group of architects were not the first people we talked to. That's what usually happens in development. You start talking to master planners, you start talking to architects, then you start talking to engineers, and you start talking to the bankers, the people who will finance the project, and then you engage with the scientists. The scientists were the first group we engaged with, and that came at a serious price to us in the planning and the implementation of the project. King Abdullah University in particular, with King Abdullah University for Science and Technology, KAUST, in particular with the group of scientists, terrestrial ecologists, marine ecologists, and environmental scientists, who we first engaged with to understand the habitat and to understand also the flora and the fauna that occupies and the natural habitat and the animals that already live in that space before we come in and start planning a major giga-size development tourism project within that area. Here is some of the targets that are set upon us, and we have already started on delivering these targets by the board. We are not aiming to only protect the environment, as I said, we are aiming to enhance the conservation value and the conservation benefit of the whole site by 30% by the year 2040. So the next 20 to 30 years, we're aiming to enhance the environment by 30%, and that takes a serious level of investment. Serious level of investment to expand and enhance the abundance of the critical habitat that exists in the place, but also means that we cannot induce any further damage to the environment, otherwise we're going to have to pay for it to recover to achieve the 30%. The other one is zero GHG emissions during operations. So now at the moment, we have already started the calculations in our baseline for our GHG emissions, and we're aiming that we would reach zero emissions by the time we are fully operational for phase 1 and phase 2, which I'll come to. I want to talk to you, and I'll go through this presentation and show you how we have left 75% of all of the development area undeveloped, with maximum developing only 25% of the island in our area. We have set aside, by advice from the scientists, investigating over 91 islands in Daffat al-Wajh, in al-Wajh Lagoon. We have decided to set aside 9 islands. We call them the set-aside islands. These islands are of a particular importance to the critical habitat that they exist. They support many ecosystems, and for that, no visitation is allowed to those islands other than for research and scientific studies. So no one is allowed, not even for pleasure, not even for walkover, no one is allowed to visit any of those 9 islands. They are truly treated as a conservation or reserved place. We're aiming also for zero single-use plastics on all of our assets and all of our design, on all of our master plans. 100% energy sourced, 100% from renewables, and 1 million is the limit of the number of visitors per year. And 1 million is very significant. 1 million in a resort or a number of resorts, 2 giga projects that are year-round. So they're visited summer, winter, autumn. They are a year-round availability, and they are attractive year-round for all international tourists. But His Royal Highness and the board has limited the number, capped the number. So far, the number is capped by 1 million visitors a year. So we will not exceed 1 million visitors per year unless we have evidence and unless we have studies that demonstrate that it is safe to do so, and that takes, as you know, that takes a very, very long time. You're familiar, of course, I hope that you're familiar with all of the goals that are on the bottom there. I have the privilege that have contributed to negotiations of some of those SDGs, but it has also been truly refreshing to see how do we try to implement those SDGs in a tourism project. And the key is, tourism includes all of the industries. I can assure you that all of your disciplines have part to do in tourism. Those that deal with logistics, transportation engineers, transportation management, infrastructure, utilities, waste, water, accommodation, master planning, design, architects, all of it. We're working with them, we're dealing with them, and they all, even hospitals and clinics that do exist to support the people and the population that lives there, all of those disciplines do exist in tourism. And that's why we really try, our aim is to set a standard, to set the standard and lead the way to show the world how tourism can be implemented, not only in a sustainable way, but also in a regenerative manner. A little bit, some information about the project itself, and the project for phase, the project, as I said, is on the west coast of Saudi with the top left map there. It's between Al-Wajh and Umluj for the Red Sea. And we have 3 islands now are being developed, and construction is already ongoing on those 3 islands. We have Shaybara Island at the bottom there. We have Shaybara Island with the 73 keys, hyper-luxury offering. Hyper-luxury offering means part only of the island that will be utilized, not the whole island. And as you can see, the number of keys is also not a massive number of keys. It's exclusive hyper-luxury offering at the bottom there of the Al-Wajh Lagoon. This is Al-Wajh Lagoon between Al-Wajh and Umluj. The other islands are, 3 islands are called Ummahat al-Sheikh on the western side there. And for Ummahat al-Sheikh Island 9-3, it's a luxury offering with 90 keys. On Ummahat al-Sheikh 9-4 and 9-5 at the bottom, just next to it, southeast of 9-3, we have a hyper-luxury offering of 82 keys. And Shawra Island, which is a luxury lifestyle and premium offering of 2,565 keys. The number of keys, there is a massive gap between the number of keys that are luxury, hyper-luxury offering on those remote islands compared to Shawra Island. And the reason is Shawra Island is the island that is going to house the maximum of the pressure of development that is going to happen in Al-Wajh Lagoon. It's an island that is close to shore, so we're going to have a bridge that links, we're going to have coastal village that houses all of the workers and all of the future workers and employees at those hotels and those resorts. And they will be linked with Shawra Island by a bridge, and that means that will reduce the marine transportation, which, as you know, disturbs marine life. Where the hub island will also house anything that is lower than, less than hyper-luxury offering in the Red Sea. We also have 2 inland resorts. We have the Desert Rock hyper-luxury offering, 60 keys. And we have 7 Dunes, which is a luxury offering of 80 keys. And we have also, we're also building the Red Sea International Airport that will receive the international guests and direct all of the international guests to all of those resorts. I want to say this is phase 1 of the Red Sea project alone, and all of this is already under construction. The infrastructure is under construction, and we have just started going vertical. We just started with the piles for the piles for the offshore overwater villas. So construction is already happening on phase 1. The Red Sea project in phase 1 has up to 5 island developments, 2 inland sites, 16 hotels in total, 75 golf villas on Shawra Island, and supporting infrastructure and airport. However, the overall development with all of its phases includes 22 islands out of 91 islands, and 6 inland sites, 50 hotels, 8,000 keys in total, including 900 condo hotel units, 1,300 residential units, and additional supporting infrastructure. That is a huge size. That is a 1 giga project. It's the Red Sea project alone in one pristine, very beautiful, very rich, with habitat, with flora and fauna that is really dear to anybody who would see it. You will become truly attached to it. The area is rich with mangrove, and the area is particular also about mangrove. I do encourage you to go and maybe read about the mangrove in the Red Sea and compare it to the mangrove that is in Al-Wajh Lagoon. The area is one of the most attractive areas in the world, with its coral reefs, the proximity of the coral reef to the coast, but the proximity also of the coral reef to those islands, but also to the thermal resistance of those corals. The whole of the Red Sea enjoys thermally resistant, more thermally resistant corals than around the world. So we hope that those corals, even with climate change, even with global warming, they will be the last to be pleased. They will be the last for us to lose. And seagrass, of course, we have many areas that have seagrass, which is important to the dugongs. Land vegetation is also rich, and it's under a lot of pressure, especially from grazing, which we are trying to handle and deal with. And marine mammals, hotspot turtles, dolphins, and green turtles, and many birds, ospreys, and flamingos that are also, more than 85% of the birds are migratory birds, but Al-Wajh Lagoon and that area is an area where they do stop on their migratory path to feed, because it does offer them the right environment, the right temperature, and also the right food source for them to stay, which is at the moment away from where humans are. Why regeneration? Why invest in regeneration? The whole world is talking about sustainability. The whole world is talking about creating balance between what we need, between the need for development, but also the need to protect and preserve. Why are we thinking about beyond sustainability into regeneration? And the reasons are really evident. One is that is really inspired by Vision 2030. Vision Tourism is a key pillar of Vision 2030, and we do believe that the Red Sea Development Company projects, Red Sea Project and Amara Project, are also pillars for tourism to establish that industry in the kingdom. But it's also a business need, as sustainability is a business need in mass urban areas. As you can see the quote on the left there from hotels, from booking.com, 72% of travelers believe people need to act now and make sustainable travel choices. The current international tourist has sustainability in his mind. You all going wherever you want to go and visit a beautiful place. You go within Saudi or outside of Saudi and visit a beautiful place, you don't want to leave a trace. You don't want to leave, negatively impact where you were where you were pleasured by, the scenes or the atmosphere or whatever you were doing. You don't want to leave a negative place. The current and the future tourists are all buying into, and they want that kind of offering. So the luxury offering is not an offering that is based on consumption or the consumption of resources. The luxury offering is on you visiting a place that is you becoming part of that story that makes sense, and that story of doing the right thing now and in the future, inshallah. Tourism has a responsibility as an industry, one part, serious part of your social license to operate is being able not only to contribute to the environment and not only to make an investment into the environment, but also to make an investment into the socio-economic situation and the surrounding area. We have a team established within our company that takes care of the employment opportunities and preparing the locals in Tabuk region and Medina region, prepare all of the young to come into and become part of the social of those giga projects. The outcomes of it's the right thing to do, as I've said, and the travelers' expectations are changing, and we want to attract those travelers. But I want to talk about the outcomes of the Marine Spatial Planning exercise. Marine Spatial Planning, we were the first giga project, tourism project in the world to conduct a Marine Spatial Planning exercise as soon as we've gathered enough data from site where we felt we can actually start applying computerized models to investigate for us, assign for each, and you can see on the slide, it's a published study, by the way, you can look it up, but we've assigned for every square kilometer of all of that huge region a value that is based on its importance into the ecosystem, its importance in its connectivity between different ecosystems, the value of the ecosystem that exists there, and then we also measured the level of impact that this 1 square kilometer will suffer from sea transport, from tourist activities, from walkovers, from jet skis on the site, and port access, and helicopters flying over. All of that went into a computerized model, and when you were talking about bringing all of those together, I remember 2 years ago in London, in a room similar to this, scientists around one table with the CEO, all overlooking that table, us changing areas for the pressure, for the dynamics to change so that we achieve the balance that we want to achieve. The results of this Marine Spatial Planning were presented to His Royal Highness, were presented to the board, and on that basis, we have decided that only 22 islands out of 91 islands will be developed for the life of this project, unless we find out, otherwise in the few years. We've tested, it's a computerized model, and I think it would be interesting for people who are interested in marine science and interested in environmental modeling, which is something that was insightful to me at the time. We ran multiple scenarios, 5 scenarios were run to test where do we start, and how do we distribute that pressure in a way where we, if you distribute the pressure from the footprint, then the pressure from infrastructure and the connectivity between that distribution starts causing a problem. And the team of multidisciplinary scientists and developers were all in the room trying to figure that out, and as an outcome of about a few months of running those scenarios back on the computer, we have decided on the level of pressure in terms of development, but also on the need and where do we need to make an investment to enhance the environment in Al-Wajh Lagoon. Al-Wakadi Island, one island out of the 91 islands in Al-Wajh Lagoon, ضفة الوجه. أقرب للوجه، أقرب لأملج عفوا. أقرب لأملج من الوجه. It's closer to Umluj than it is to Al-Wajh. It was one of the first islands we visited, and when we went there, it was stunningly beautiful. The right size, the right width, the right temperature, the right proximity to coast, beautiful golden white sands. It was the most attractive island for us to develop on. We actually wanted the experience center to be in Al-Wakadi. We wanted the opening of the Red Sea project to be on Al-Wakadi. And we went on and on talking about how do we design and how do we master plan the development of Al-Wakadi. But 2 months later, And when we had enough information from all of the surveys we conducted on site, we had other neighbors who were actually already using al-Waqadi. Al-Waqadi was, al-Waqadi in Arabic was very, very important to them as a nesting site for the critically endangered hawksbill turtle. The number of nests and the number of female hawksbill turtles visiting al-Waqadi was so huge that we just would not be able to have any development exist in al-Waqadi and preserve it at the same time, or have an acceptable level of visitation by those female hawksbill turtles. So the decision was made by the CEO and presented to the board for approval. There will be no development in al-Waqadi. And really from that moment, which was about two years ago, from that moment, we understood what does it mean to develop in an area that is pristine. It's a treasure for the kingdom, and that needs to be protected, and there are ways and methods to protect it, but also have a giga project with the required demand, with the required impact of the local economy from it. Talk engineering a little bit. We're planning the largest no-take marine protected area in the entirety, almost the entirety of Dhafat al-Wajh Lagoon, which is over 7,000 square kilometers. We are also already figuring out many challenging engineering questions because we are 100% of the grid. We are not connecting to the national grid. We are generating our own power 100% from renewable sources, and for that we need to have the largest in the world battery storage that provides us with 1,000 megawatt hours. This plus our mobility strategy with only electricity powered cars. Then with those two main factors, we do truly stand a good chance, inshallah, to achieve net zero carbon emissions. As I mentioned, zero waste to landfill, which is not an ambition. Zero waste to landfill is not an ambition. Now, during construction, with all of the packaging and all of the workers that are on site right now, when over 10,000 workers now working, we have already, one of the first assets were delivered to us was the waste management facility. And the waste management facility's biggest challenge, and what they are dealing with right now, is the waste that comes from construction waste. And it's basically the crushing and the preparing of all of that waste and bringing that waste back then to the contractors to use as raw material and fill material. Also food waste and combustible waste now is being, the food waste is now being treated, and it's routed now to our nursery, which we operate, and is used as source for the plants there. We also take a lot of pride to be the first development in the Middle East to secure first stage platinum certificate under LEED for cities, and that is in particular for our coastal village. We have more than 80% of our assets are all certified LEED and Mustard, and we have 20 assets and designs that are already accredited by LEED. And something we take a lot of pride in that GRESB, which is the Global Environmental and Social Real Estate Benchmarking, International Benchmarking, have benchmarked what we did against global peers and global players, and we have secured 91 out of 100 in our environmental protection, environmental enhancement scores and the management that we do. The dark skies is maybe a concept that is new to the region, but it's not new to natural reserves around the world. We take a lot of pride in that we are working at the moment with the engineers and the certifying body to become the first reserve in the Middle East and the largest reserve globally to be certified dark skies. What does that mean? We Arabs have always looked up in our deserts to the skies. We have a connection with how the sky looks like and the modern lifestyle, did deprive us from that joy. It is a joy, and it is a serious part of our environment to protect the skies. All of our assets are being designed, and the engineers are working on lighting strategies so that all of the lights are focused and targeted, and there will not be that glare from the city, from any development that you usually have, so that when you go out of your villa in the middle of the night, one, you will feel it, you are in the middle of nowhere because you will see no glare around you, but two, you will truly enjoy that cup of coffee looking up at the skies and enjoying God's creation in the skies. Some of our recent achievements, I've listed some of them, and I of course put my picture, the first one there on the left. We achieved ISO 14001 accreditation. We have also with Blue Planet Ecosystems, we have partnered with them for a sustainable fish pilot scheme, and that is a cradle-to-cradle approach. That is a circular approach for the fish farming on land with Blue Planet. We have also a Red Sea Farms partnership for sustainable food, and those are really working collaboratively with cows for those food sources and for food produce that can take salt water, for example, and can reduce the demand of fresh water. We have secured 14.12 billion Saudi riyals in green financing, and that does give you a signal of the trust that the market has, but also the banks and the financiers in what we are trying to do and how we are demonstrating this at the moment. We have published our inaugurating and the first sustainability report. It's available to the public. Log into our website. You can read the sustainability report. Maybe 1-2 years from now, you can question me on the targets that we have in the sustainability report. But I hope that maybe in 5-10 years, I'll be questioning you, inshallah, if you have delivered on those targets or not, and what your progress is in the sustainability report. We have also, and I wanted to signify with the last one here, is our MOUs and our close working relationship with non-profit organizations and NGOs in the region. Those are people with great deal of expertise in working with locals and connecting private sector and government to the local community. And we're taking them as serious partners to enable that level of access for us with the locals. Sustainability is not only about environmental protection and environmental enhancement. Sustainability is also about adding to the welfare and adding to the people and the locals, not only in the kingdom by job creation, which is huge, but also adding to the locals and the people of Al-Wajh, Al-Umluj, Al-Liban, and the people who live there, a real opportunity to be integrated into the development project. So for example, with the Mango Festival is one of our activities where we connected with the people who grow up mango in Umluj. They had Umluj mango, and we took that mango, we had training for them on the packaging. We partnered with the NGO for the online offering of that mango, and for the first time ever, last year, you were able to buy Umluj mango online from an online app. And inshallah, next year we're moving to Red Sea produce, and we're going to have several produce, inshallah, from local farms being available for locals and for Saudis. But the real aim is to develop that farming to become sustainable farming, to develop the locals to upscale and develop their access to international expertise, so that then that produce would become a real source for the food that is needed by all of those resorts in the near future, inshallah. Contractor workshops, where we are working closely with our contractors to employ locals, and we're holding many workshops with contractors and bringing in the locals as well to find that access to contractors to the local community for job opportunities. Red Sea Thrive 1 and 2, where 19,000 local seedlings. We're also taking part at the moment with the Tabuk University, but also with locals in environmental initiatives to increase the awareness and also start in terms of land vegetation generation. I want to talk about a job preparation program where we are holding training programs for locals with targeted needs, so that then they can develop targeted skills that are needed by our contractors in order for them, inshallah, in the short term, find job opportunities with our contractors and access the work market there. The Red Sea Careers Day is very much linked to that. Socio-economic and cultural baseline assessment, which was completed last month, and we're just awaiting the final baseline, and this is a socio-economic and cultural baseline that stretched all the way from Tabuk, all the way to Al-Wajh, all the way to Umrah. Operations and beyond. I started this by saying we think that we did really well and did our absolute best to deliver on the vision of the board and the vision of His Royal Highness and the leadership of this country and the shareholders to deliver on their vision in our pre-concept planning and concept master planning and the distribution of the pressure and how do we design, and now we're managing the construction and the rest of design. But as I mentioned, the real pressure and the real game will be in the operational stage. It is that stage that we really need to focus on. We have at the moment roadmaps for carbon reduction that encompass within its boundaries not only the assets, because this has been taken care of, but also the connection between the human element and those assets, those that are living there and those that are visiting. And sustainable operations is at the moment something that we are revisiting because the need, the operational readiness demand has spiked, and so we are accelerating our assessment of the operational readiness to make sure that it is sustainable in all of its approaches and where the gaps are. Environmental monitoring is what keeps me awake at night, because environmental monitoring is not only telling you if something, la samahullah, went wrong somewhere, but also environmental monitoring needs to be planned in a way that also provides you with the needed information so that you can continue to, as the previous speaker has said, continue to test the data that you're providing, that where the basis of your initial assumptions, that they are still valid. Green mobility, one of our key challenges within the destination, but the strategy has been set, and you can read about it in the sustainability report. Policies and targets, and many of these the esteemed previous speaker has alluded to, so I'll jump this and I will end maybe with this video and enough about me talking.
Environment and Sustainability at the Red Sea Development Company. Very inspiring for me to join a company where it's a little bit different than the norm that exists in many other places. Protection of coral is very important for us because coral is our highest priority, but we go to a new level where we make sure that the few coral that are impacted by construction are being relocated and monitored to protect the marine environment, in particular the water quality, which is one of our most precious assets here in the Red Sea.
We are now looking at a new wave of tourism that we call regenerative tourism. We strive to regenerate rather than sustain. And this regeneration aim and objective is a groundbreaking proposition for the world that starts here in the Red Sea.
When you see 20 or 30 meters away from where rocks are being tipped into the water quality has not been impacted at all. The environment is not a challenge that we have to deal with and overcome and make sure that we protect, but rather our mandate is to make sure that Al-Wajh Lagoon habitat system does better from an environmental protection point of view and environmental enhancement. So we continue to have this beautiful corals for us for generations to come.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful vision with an amazing project, and then inshallah we all hope to visit that habitat and enjoy that experience. If may I invite Dr. Al-Majid and His Excellency Dr. Irani to the stage.